concerned about the demand for personal conferences, which have practically filled every spare minute of mine until I leave. Now, they're wonderful counselors here, and don't any of you feel that you should ever go to have conferences with 2 or 3 leaders, because it's using up too much valuable time. The shift of the program has made it a half a dozen folks that will have conferences with me after 11 o'clock. Wonder where they're, what will happen to them. We're going to reserve a half a dozen chairs over here, and you're writing, and coached athletes, and I have done some exploring in both those lines, and I have written a textbook on the art of the short story. It came out in 1922, 33 years ago. It is still going strong. It has outlived all the other textbooks of that period. Textbooks have a certain life and then they're put aside. But there's some rather novel things I put in that many teachers like, so it's still continuing. But I'm not here to boast about it. I'm here to confess that if I could induce the professors at Harvard, at Chicago University, at California, there are many college universities still using it, if I could convince them that there's a greater teacher than I am, if they could turn to that greater teacher, even in the short story, I tell them they could chuck my textbook into the wastebasket. Now, I'm here to give you a 5-minute lesson in the short story under the guidance of that other teacher. After I've given that 5-minute lesson, I'm going to spend the rest of the hour in a lesson on prayer. There are only 2 absolutely positive requirements of a short story. One is it should have one character so well drawn that you'll never forget him. The other is it should have such suspense that you can't lay the story down until you have finished it. The story I refer to have both those essentials. A certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of the 2 said to his father, "Divide that portion of thy living that falleth unto me." And he divided unto them his living. And when he'd gathered all together, he took his journey into a far country. Now, there's always suspense when you go into a far country. I wish that you could have shared in some of the meetings before Roland, Marcia, and I took that trip around the world. Friends gathered from all over the country to meet with us, and at Chicago retreat, they gave me a wonderful send-off, and again in the National Presbyterian Church on New Year's Eve in Washington. We were starting out to build a belt of prayer around the world, and it was filled with suspense. We didn't know what was going to happen. But my son had finished his freshman year in college. He said to me, "Dad, I've been brought up in a college professor's home with lots of books around me. But some of the boys at college have worked on farms or in factories and can work better than I can. Would you mind if I took a year off and hitchhiked across the country and looked for jobs and learned how to work?" And I said, "Go to it, son." One of my daughters took him out in our little Chevrolet to the edge of the city. The last she saw of him, he was in a big Lincoln car hitchhiking toward Omaha. A letter from Omaha, no jobs. A letter from Denver, no jobs. A letter from Portland, Oregon, no jobs. I didn't have to read detective stories that year for suspense. All I had to do is to wait for the mailman. At last he got a job in Oakland, California. And when the year was over, he came back with some calluses on his hands and some new fiber in his soul. But that was suspense that we waited to hear the result of. But in the story I refer to, the young man who took his journey to a far country wasted his substance in riotous living. And when he had spent all, there rose a mighty famine in that land, and he began to be at want. Now the suspense is getting quite terrific. In a situation like that, you can't hold the suspense too long. So this master storyteller knew that the time had come to relieve it a little, and so he gets a job. He joins himself to a citizen of that country, but alas, he sends him into the field to feed the one creature that a good Israelite cannot eat. And he fain would have filled himself on the husks that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. About this time in my short story class, I used to love to give them a little test, a little tryout, to see how many of them were born geniuses in the short story writing. One of the situations I offered them was of a young woman who'd been to a house party. She arrives at home and she hears the phone ringing as she enters the house, and she hurries and picks up the receiver. A voice at the other end that sounds just like her sister's says, "And so you got back safely. How do you feel now that the house party's over?" "Oh, just terrible. I never was so bored in all my life as I was at that house party." "Oh, I'm sorry." And as she hears the telephone receiver click up at the other end, she suddenly recognizes that that was the voice of her hostess. Now, if you can get her out of that fix, you can write stories that the Ladies' Home Journal will accept. But that was merely a matter of social adjustment, and this is a matter of life and death. Now, when I get a character in a situation like that, instead of wearing myself out trying to work them out of that situation with all the brains or the mere brains that I have found that the seemingly lazy man's method is better. I've been accused of being a specialist in redemptive loafing. And if you do it in the right way, there's a time to loaf. And that's a crisis like this. I would simply say, let us pray. Down in Birmingham, Alabama, there's a statue to Brother Brian. And my wife and I asked our hosts as they were driving past, how do they happen to have that statue like that there, kneeling down? Why, he's the saint of Birmingham. Is he still living? Oh, yes. Why, if you call on him, the first thing he'd say would be, let us pray. Yes, I had some wonderful contacts with him, and he was held up by a highwayman once who took his watch and his wallet. He said, "You forgot something, brother." "What?" "Let us pray." When he finished praying, the highwayman restored his watch and his wallet. When he's a young man, he proposed, and the young lady declined, and he said, "Let us pray," and she accepted him. So I have made it a habit of, in time of crisis, to just say, "Let us pray." The end of first act in Macbeth, I would tell my Shakespeare class that I'd like to appear there at that time and just say to Macbeth, "Let us pray." And and then I'd say, "What do you want?" He'd say he didn't want to pray. I'd say, "Well, what do you want?" He said, "I want to be king." "Oh, that's wonderful. King Duncan doesn't have any heir, and he's already selected you for his successor." "I know that, but I don't want to wait." "Well, just look here. Tell your wife, by the way, to come in from the kitchen. Quit sharpening those butcher knives. It makes me nervous. Come in here and sit down. I want to put a little CFO on you folks. And instead of commencing the series of murders to get to be king quick, let's pray about it. And I'm going to prophesy what'll happen. In about 9 months, your King Duncan will write you a letter. He'll say, it's getting pretty chilly up here in Edinburgh, and my rheumatism's getting worse. I think I'll resign, go down to Florida and spend the winters. Supposing he didn't do it in 9 months, supposing he didn't resign for 9 years, do you realize how long this Queen Victoria, Queen Elizabeth, was in training for the queenship? She was so thoroughly trained that she knows exactly how to shake hands, how to greet people, how to look over the state papers. They send the state papers from Parliament to her every day, and she does it goes over them in 3 hours. Her father was just slipped in there without any training. It took him 6 hours every day to go through that job. If I knew I was going to be president, if one of you knew you were to be president someday, you ought to at least spend as many years preparing for it as you would to be prepared to be a doctor. 4 years in college, 3 years in medical school, 3 years in internship. And so it would have been very, very wise to have waited a little bit, and then Macbeth could have been a glorious king. His wife wouldn't have gone insane. He wouldn't have been killed with thousands of others in a great civil war. I can apply this to our own situations. We could have prevented both these last wars, I believe, if we had said, and if our leaders had said, let us pray. So I'm really stepping out while I'm telling you about the short story, where I'm turning now into the field of prayer. Let us pray. And so I'm going to give you a lesson now of prayer, and you won't need to take notes because you'll find it all summarized in the 15th chapter of Luke. The first law of prayer is summed up in this statement. When he came to himself, he said, how many hired servants of my father have bread enough and to spare, and I perish here from hunger? To realize that your Father not only has abundance of love, but abundance of everything else to meet your need if you're on the beam and if the need is really needed, if it's real and sound and you're a worthy vessel for it. I know that is so because I was brought up as a Presbyterian in a Scotch Presbyterian family. We never bought anything until we had the money. When we married, we went without a hot water heater for the first 10 years. We went out without, I didn't buy an automobile till I was 40. We saved and skimped because we knew we had a Presbyterian Lord, a God, and knew that he was Scotch and very economical. I have since discovered that he has abundance. And we should ask great things and expect great things if you're on the beam and if the thing is sound and right. And so I learned that. Mary Welch came to a Camp Farthest Out about 13 years ago as married to a farmer that never had seen more than $200 in cash in the whole year. She'd been brought as up in a sharecropper's home and had hardly had enough to eat most of her life. We gave her a scholarship to a Camp Farthest Out, and she was thrilled with the writing class. It renewed her interest in writing. When she went home, out of gratitude to the whole thing, she said that she dates the date of her birth at that camp. And she, every night for 1 solid month, after 16 hours of work on the farm, she would sit and write me a letter of gratitude. At the end of that month, I took those 30 letters and bound them together in a little book called Reckoning at Dusk. And it made her famous as a writer, and she's written many books since. A millionaire lady in St. Paul invited her to be her guest in her apartment. And she prepared water, Mary prepared water for a bath, but remembering how in the certain periods in Texas there was a lack of water, a drought, she knowing how it took a lot of coal or heat to heat the water, she put about 3 inches of water in the tub. And before she went in to take her bath, the hostess went in, took a look, and she began to fill it up. And Mary said, "Oh, don't waste the water." And then this millionaire lady gave her a talk that she's put into one of her books. She said, "No wonder you've been in poverty all your life. You have a poverty matrix. You have a poverty complex. I want to tell you that I'm renting this apartment and I have paid the rent in advance. There are 10,000 lakes in Minnesota. You could turn the faucet on and let it run for 1,000 years, and you couldn't even empty one of those lakes. You must understand that God's supply is just as great for your needs as the water is for the state of Minnesota. And she never forgot it. And today she's supporting many relatives. She's giving abundantly to her different causes. She's just deeded over her home that she and her husband built with their own hands as a meeting place or a sanctuary for the disciplined order people in that area of Texas want to meet at little retreats. Everything opened up, and she learned that first law of prayer. The second law of prayer is summed up in this statement, when he came to himself. A Negro parson was asked to elucidate that passage, and he said, well, it was this way. First he took off his overcoat, then he took off his coat, then he took off his vest, then he took off his shirt, and after a while he came to himself. Now there's more truth than humor in that. One of the hardest things I have found as a teacher in colleges is to find what people really want. If you were to have one prayer answered today, what would it be? A fairy godmother granted 3 wishes that she would answer, that would come true for an old couple. And the old man said, goody, I always wanted a plum pudding like my mother used to make. My wife ain't no good making plum puddings. Well, that insulted the old wife, and she said, I wish that plum pudding was stuck to your chin. They had to use the last wish to take it off his chin, and they were all used up. Now the father said to the son, what do you want, my son? I want that portion of thy substance that falleth unto me. I want that share of the money. Well, that was his overcoat, and he got it. Now what do you want? I want to go to the cities, and I want to visit all the nightclubs and all the dance halls, all the racetracks and all the gambling joints. I want to see life. Well, that was his coat, and he lost his money in that. Now what do you want? I want a job. Well, that was his vest. And then he got a job but nothing to eat. Now what do you want? I want something to eat. Well, that was his shirt. And then he finally came to himself, and then he said, now at last I know what I want. I want my Father. If I can get back to my Father, I'll get a job. I'll get plenty to eat, bread enough and to spare, and I'll have a good time. I'll have all those things. Why didn't I think of that first? And so Jesus summed it all up. Seek first the kingdom and its righteousness, and these will be added unto you. So the question is, what do you want? If we have pie, you'd notice that I would cut off the tip and put it to one side and eat it last. You'd notice I would do that so regularly whenever we had it that after a while you'd say, do you have a compulsion or a complex of some kind? I say, no. I was brought up to do that by my children. We think we bring our children up. But that's a mistake. They bring us up. When my children were little, they'd say, Dad, you cut off that tip and eat it last. Then whatever you wish for, when you eat it, will come true. Helen May and Miles would eat very fast and then have to think a long time to decide what to wish for. Marion, who's the snail of the family, traveling along very slowly, never hesitated. She was all through and up from the table before they'd decide what to wish for. So one day Helen May said, Marion, why is it you always know what you want to wish for? Because I always wish for the same thing. Well, I was quite curious to know what that was, so I asked her, and she replied, oh, I always wish that all my wishes would come true. Seek first the kingdom of heaven and its righteousness, and all these wishes will come true. Now you will see why on the first opening night I said that you're all of you angels, but like the angel that came to this earth and got in a traffic jam and got a bump on the head and suffered from amnesia, so that he went for years unaware of the fact of his divine origin. I said, you're all of your angels, and you're all of you suffering from amnesia. It's going to take a whack on the head or the heart or somewhere to wake you up. So we've been trying to shock you, give you some shock treatments or some other kinds here, to wake you up to the fact that you're living in the kingdom right now and here if you can just open up and accept it. And so let us all just go back to the Father, and then you don't have to ask for this thing and that thing. You'll find they've commenced to all fall in line. And now the third law. The third law is repentance or forgiveness. When I came to Macalester College, when I came to St. Paul 43 years ago, a woman in the next block was dying of cancer of the throat. Her husband was chief engineer of the great Milwaukee Railroad. They had abundance of money so they could send her to all the specialists, to the Mayo Clinic, to the Johns Hopkins Hospital. And the verdict was unanimous at every point. In 6 months, you'll be in your grave. So she went to an old lady who believed in prayer, and the old lady said, there's somebody that you must hate. She said, there certainly is. It makes me sick all over just to think of her. Well, you'll have to forgive her. There's no hope. I'll never forgive her. That evening, her husband asked the verdict, and she told him, and when they were ready for bed, he said, let us kneel down together and have a prayer. And he put his arm around her waist and said, now, we're not going to get up from our knees until you have forgiven that woman. Then we'll kneel here all night. But before morning, she gave up and forgave the woman. A few years ago in Florida, Coral Gables, I was addressing a church, and there on the front row sat this lady, looking just as young as she had looked 40 years before. There's a few strands of white in her hair. People came to her and come to her now for prayer and help, and because she learned one of the great laws of prayer, forgiveness and repentance. And that's summed up in prodigal son's statement, I will rise and go to my father. I'll say, Father, I've sinned before heaven and in thy sight, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. The fourth law of prayer is relinquishment. When a woman called me up once about her dying boy, I said, I'd pray for her. A week later, she called up and said that 6 doctors have left the home, and they say he'll not live through the day. I said, explain the details of this. Well, he's been paralyzed with infantile paralysis from the neck down for a week. He's having 2 convulsions a minute for the last 4 hours. He has a fever of 104. His spine has been punctured 11 times. There's no more relief from that. So the doctors have just given up. I said, well, now supposing your son should live and should go have a very hard life, like some people do. I don't believe in hell that's going to, my God is such a God of love, he wouldn't smile and rejoice over having any of his children burn in a furnace even for 5 hours, much less for all eternity. But I do know that he puts clamps on, and he can give you a little scorching once in a while. And there's a lot of hell right in this world, and a lot of purgatory right in this world. And I could tell a number of things that'd be worse than death. So I said, now, if you're willing to put that son of yours in the Father's hands and just ask for whatever's best for the boy, and not limit it to just his getting well, I can pray for you then with power. But if you limit it and just make an outline and insist that God's going to do your way, I can't pray with power. But if you're willing to let him do it in his way, whatever's best for your son, it's all right. She said, I think I can do that. An hour later, she called up and she said, I've been on my knees for an hour. I told the father this wasn't a son of mine, he's the son of God's. He just loaned to me. And I want whatever is best for the boy. He knows, the father knows that I want him back here if possible, but I'm giving him without any restrictions, completely in the Father's hands. And I'm willing to accept with radiant acquiescence whatever is best for the boy. Well, all the friends and all the neighbors and all the relatives crowded that house. It was just, the house was full, and she's a wonderful cake baker. She made a wonderful angel food cake, took coffee and chocolate, And as she would serve the group with that sweet smile, she was a very beautiful woman, and so smiling and cheering them up as she went around. And then when she'd go out in the kitchen to get some more coffee, they'd touch their heads with their hands and say, what we're afraid of, the strain has affected her mind. She has a peace that isn't consistent with a sound understanding. Then it was I learned for the first time all this power that was in that, hidden in that statement in the Bible, that peace that passeth all understanding. I discovered the most powerful element of prayer is to have such peace regardless of what's going to happen, that you almost create the atmosphere by which it happens. Eisenhower's knowing that millions have been praying for him when he went to the on that journey to the conference in Geneva. He came back with a peace because he saw an atmosphere was created. Details weren't worked out, but if he can hold that peace, and we keep praying under him, wonderful things will come. Because here's one of the laws of prayer. Our cargoes come to us over calm seas. It wasn't until Rickenbacker and that group of frustrated men in rubber boats off the main travel routes with no water and no food, if they should go into hysterics, lose their minds, why nothing could have happened. One of the men did. He drank some of that salt water and he died. They had to bury him there at sea. That made them all, the rest of them, more frustrated. All but one, the youngest of them all, got peace of mind. Finally, Rickenbacker said, "What's that book that you keep looking into?" "Oh, that's a little pocket testament my chaplain gave me." "Well, does it bring you peace?" "It sure does." "Well, read it out loud." And so they passed that around and they read that day and night. Take no anxious thought what you shall eat and what you shall drink. The Heavenly Father knoweth you have need of these things. Got that calm seas then. A bird came thousands of miles, something never heard of before, landed on the very hat of Rickenbacker, fed them with its body. They needed water, and rain came. Even when the rain was blowing the other way, it came, and they couldn't understand it. Days went by, 17 days, and the old Texan, the only one that knew how to pray, and he didn't know how to pray. He just began, well, old master, you'll have to give us some food now or we're going to starve, all of us. And 12 fish leaped into their boats. When Rickenbacker came back, he said, I wouldn't dare say this, what he said over the radio, if I didn't have 6 men to testify what I'm saying is true. They sent up a flare every night, hoping someone would see it. Well, this flare this night went zigzagging around and came down right on the boats. If it had even touched one of those rubber boats, all its occupants would have gone deep into the sea, and the other boats could never have held one of them. It had just seen them all die there before them. A tragedy averted by 1 inch, but it went right into a school of fish, and the fish leaped into their boats. Now, all those things, they say are unexplainable. I'll say that you could explain anything if you follow these laws of prayer I'm talking about, and that one of the most essential, is to be willing to give. And so she gave that son, absolutely, to the father. And in 3 months he was back in school, not even a limp, and no one could understand it. The relinquishing of situations in our helplessness is what brings God into this picture of the most marvelous, marvelous power. And so those are the 4 laws. And that was summed up in when the prodigal son said, "Make me as one of thy hired servants. I'm not worthy to be thy son." The 5th law is to do something about it, so he rose and he came to his father. And on the way he wondered how he was going to be received. Why, he'd disgraced the family. He'd probably be cast right back there into the pigsty. A man was riding on a train, a minister, an elderly minister. He looked across the aisle and he saw a young man with his head buried in his hands. Every mile on that ride, that young man seemed to be growing more agitated and more agitated. Well, finally his pastor went across and sat down beside him and said, Are you in trouble, my son? Could I help you? Oh, he said, I mortally offended my father years ago. He told me to leave the house and never to let even my shadow darken that door again. I have written him numberless letters, and they always come back unopened. I have finally found my Savior. I have a fine job. I'm on a business journey that I have routed through my hometown. I have written my mother asking if I'm forgiven. Will she tie a white rag on the willow tree down by the railroad track? Now we're approaching the town, and I don't dare look out. Well, I'll look out for you, son, if you'll tell me what to look for. Well, we'll cross a little bridge, and the first white house, right across the bridge, there'll be a white house set back among the trees, and the big willow tree is right down by the railroad track. Now they were unmistakably approaching the place. Here was the bridge, there was the little white house, here was the willow tree, and on every branch was a white rag. Not content with that alone, every tree and every shrub in that front yard were adorned with the little white rags. Son, prepare to go home. Your parents are waiting for you. Have any of you ever made an error or committed a mistake that's caused offense and unforgiveness on the part of someone that you considered dear? If you know what abundant forgiveness is, you'll know the most marvelous experience in the world. I've almost envied Starr Daily at times, who spent 25 years in the underworld, when he went and found a forgiving father. A theosophist said to him, you will have to go through 77 reincarnations of karma. You will have to pay for all that you've done in this world slowly as a mole eat its way through a mountain. And Starr said, no, all my sins have been washed away. Well, how did that happen? By Jesus, who died on the cross for me. A man came over to Starr Island, and he didn't go to any meetings. He said, I just came over to meet you. Why'd you want to meet me? Read any of my books? No. Why'd you want to meet me? I wanted to meet the father-in-law of Norman Elliott. I said, well, you tell me a little about yourself. He said, I am one of the worst gunmen of New York. I've been in the penitentiary many times. I'm one of the gangsters that been shooting up, they're hired to kill. And a CFO lawyer took my case, said that if, only on one condition, that if he got me out, that I would go to a CFO, and so I promised. I went to one. He said, by the way, I'm a son of a Jewish rabbi. My family have all turned against me. I've disgraced the family, and I couldn't understand what these older men were talking about, Jesus, this and that, and I just felt I'd have to leave. But that young chap there, Norman Elliott, he had his feet on the ground, and I said, maybe he can help me. So I went to him, and after talking about it, he said, well, suppose the three of us take a walk. The three of us? Why, there are only two of you. Must be crazy, too. What do you mean by the three of us? And Norman said, you wouldn't mind taking a walk with Jesus, would you? And so we walked around the lake, and on the way home I said, if a man was willing to die 2,000 years ago that my sins could be washed away, I want to be baptized tomorrow morning as a Christian. There's only one Baptist minister in the group, and he felt that the camp had been a little bit low, and he's packing up to leave, he and his family. When he found that he wanted to be completely immersed, and they went to a special Baptist church, and they gave that Jew, the son of a rabbi, one of the big criminals of New York City, and completely immersed him, why, it just lifted that whole camp into the heights. And this young man said, I'm going to give the rest of my life to Jesus. Forgiveness is marvelous. I'll say frankly, traveling all around the world, I've found wonderful good in the many, many religions. You know, we can make a wonderful, we've reached this time when we've got to live our Christianity or be ashamed of it, or be ashamed of calling ourselves Christians. Wherever I went, I found most of them tried to live their Christianity, their religion, but I found not a one of them had this vast forgiving and redemptive power of Christianity. It stands alone. Yes, I just, in Pakistan, just got a letter from Mrs. Bayard, and she says over there that the trouble with the Christians, they take it so lightly. They consider us, because they'd been at Koinonia and Camps Farthest Out, they consider us heavy Christians. The other Christians are a little bit shy of us because we take it seriously. But we have found a much closer fellowship and spiritual oneness with the Muslims, who go all the way, and most of them go the way. They get down on their mats and they pray 5 times a day to God. Most of the Christians just spend their time in the cocktail parties and just have the name. Even the missionaries over there, they found, are very limited. And so what they want are some more Koinonia folks on the staff. There are 5 of them, but get a little more, and then Roland Brown can go there and build up a whole spirit there we didn't take in Pakistan. And they're to awaken them. And that's why while he goes abroad, I'm going to stay here, for I have found that Christians of the United States needs re-Christianizing to really live this thing and take it seriously. You don't have to ask the Hindu or Muslim to pray. They'll put hours in on it. And the Christians, they just go around with a name. And you go into a hotel in India and you ask for some liquor. They'll say, we're prohibition. We don't have any liquor. Well, I'm an American Christian. The government permits us, the hotels, to have a little liquor on hand just for American Christians. And so as I say, I have found what we need is to come to these camps like this and get indoctrinated. And that's what they want over there. Not only to win the others to Christianity, but win the Christians to live their Christianity. Well, this young man, when he goes home, how's the father going to receive him? Why, the father saw him first, ran, fell on his neck and kissed him. And he said, Father, I've got a little speech. I've got it all carefully memorized. I have sinned before heaven in thy sight, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. And he never finished it. Why? He never had a chance to tell him how he relinquished, willing to make me one of thy hired servants. Did he forget the speech? No, the father interrupted him. Bring forth a robe, best robe, and put on him, and bring shoes for his feet, and ring for his hands, and bring forth the fatted calf, and let us kill him. For this my son was dead, and is alive again, was lost, and is found. And they began to make merry, and the curtain goes down, and they lived happily ever after. Only they didn't, because the play didn't end right then, because as long as there's any chance for suspense, this master storyteller will not let the story end. And there's plenty of suspense down in the wheat field. Now the elder brother was in the field working, and as he came into the house, he heard music and dancing. Now that he controls the whole thing, has made some laws. No more music, no more dancing, no more laughter, no more play. You're to work 12 hours a day, and when you've filled this barn with the grain, you're to build another barn, and then fill it with the grain, then another one, until I'm the richest man in Palestine. And so he called him one of the servants and asked him what these things might mean. And the servant said, Why, your brother has come, and they've killed the fatted calf, that they might make merry and be glad, because they've received him safe and sound. But he was angry and would not go in. And so there it is, a 5-act tragedy in the making. If Shakespeare had gotten hold of it, he certainly would have made it. He did get hold of it, but he didn't want anyone to know he was a plagiarist, so he changed the men to women. And when King Lear comes back with the youngest daughter, Cordelia, the older daughters now that have inherited it, he gave all the property to them. They cast them out, and King Lear goes insane, and the daughter dies, and you can't hire anyone to play the part of King Lear. Why, they can play Hamlet, Macbeth, but King Lear. Only one man really dared to undertake it, and his name was Richard Irving, and the Queen knighted him for his courage in taking that terrific part. And so here, why I consider this the greatest story ever told is because in 3 short sentences, it's going to be changed from a 5-act tragedy into a 1-act masterpiece. And the father came forth and entreated him, and he answering said, Father, all my life have I served thee. All these years have I worked for thee, and not one of your commandments have I ever broken. And yet you never gave me unto me a kid that I might make merry with my friends. But when this thy son has come, I won't own him, he's not a brother of mine. This thy son has come, who's wasted thy substance with harlots, thou killest for him the fatted calf. And everything he said was correct. He had a much better case than the daughters of King Lear. He had the whole situation in hand for a tragedy, and now comes the great climax. My son, thou art ever with me. All that I have is thine. But 'tis fitting that we should make merry and be glad. For this thy brother was dead and is alive again, was lost and is found. And I know those words penetrated into the heart of that elder brother. If they hadn't, if there's any chance for suspense, the story would have gone on. Yes, you could just see him say, that's right, Dad, that kid brother of mine was the most generous of us all. I'm ashamed of myself. Well, now, what do those gifts mean? The best robe represents the best body possible. 30 years ago, I went to the greatest nerve specialist in the Northwest, and I said, why is it I'm just 1/3 efficient? And he looked me all over and he said, yes, you've inherited your mother's nervous organism. You don't have any business teaching, and I'm going to give you some very important advice that you must follow. You must content yourself with doing just 1/3 of a man's work, and then you can perhaps live till be 70 or 60 even. Well, I opened the Bible, put my hand down, said, Lord, give me some guidance, and I found a statement, commit thy ways unto the Lord, trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. I said, all right, Lord, that's a promise that you'll look after the results. You'll do the bringing to pass if I just commit it to you. So I'm going to my classes now, just looking after the intentions, and you look after the results. Well, the classes doubled in size and doubled in efficiency because they all wanted to come to a happy-looking professor, and to me, each class was like a party. I didn't have any responsibility. The results were 9 times out of 10 were better than I anticipated, and people might praise me and say, don't give me any credit, give it all to him. Some days the results weren't very good. Instead of brooding over it, I'd just say, Lord, you didn't do a very good job today. And so I just put the whole load on him. And the result is, when the day was over, I hadn't done any work. I'd just been attending a series of parties. If they just passed the ice cream and cake, I'd known there'd been a party. Then I sat down, wrote an article for the Atlantic Monthly. Thought I'd ought to do some work, but I had such fun doing that, they accepted it. Then the Presbyterians wanted me to tell them my new secret. People were talking about it. Next night, the Methodists. Next night, the Baptists. As the weeks went by, I found I was giving about 7 talks a week. I was doing full-time preaching and full-time writing and full-time teaching. Why, I was doing 3 men's work instead of 1/3 of a man's work. So I hurried around to tell the great nerve specialist about this new secret. And the secretary said he died while you were gone. Well, that's the best robe for me. And right now, I can do 3 times as much work as I could do 30 years ago. And as all my grandparents died when they were 60, 2 of them when they were 55. And my father retired as a worn-out old man at 63. I figured that's what all I'd have to close up shop about 60. But here I am 73, and the last 7 years I've turned out a book a year, every year, and the only time I have to write is between 5 and 7 in the morning. And I'm so busy speaking or doing this and that. I'm not here to brag about it. I can't explain it, and it's a mystery yet, a mystery still. But all I want to say is that try that. You go back to the Father and put yourself utterly in his hands and see if you don't waste your energy with your frustrations and your fears and your resentments and pour it all just 2 hours a day into the right kind of work, you'll be amazed how much you can do in 2 hours when you're on the beam. Well, at any rate, that's the best body possible. I don't think I get us to hold out for more than 4 rounds against Joe Louis in a boxing match, and some of you could do better than that. But for me, that's the best rope for me. And the best rope for you, it may not mean you can run races or this or that, but within your limits, I think we have a right. When we go back to the Father all the way, we'll expect. Don't be surprised if your whole bodily functions begin to function so much more powerfully for this reason. Love brings everything into harmony, and if you didn't do anything but love for 1 week here at the Camp Farthest Out, you'd find that every organ in your body commenced to function in perfect harmony with every other organ. Every cell would function in harmony with every other cell. There's a woman sitting out here who had cancer last year, and it's all gone this year. And there's some that had stomach ulcers when they came, and in 3 days, with just doing nothing but love, they've all vanished away. You don't even have to have a prayer time, a healing hour. You don't do anything but love. The hands of the Father, and you'll begin to find everything work out. And what's more, even your ideas will come in sequence and order, in harmony. That's what's helped me. And then the next gift was a ring for the hand. Well, that means permanent friendships. My son, before he began his senior year in high school, this was 2 years before he took that trip across the continent, he said one day to his mother, you know, I don't think I've been fair to Dad in his philosophy of love. He says it's such a powerful thing. Well, to me, it's a kind of a sentimental thing. So I've been leaning over backwards. Boys sometimes say, you know, your dad believes in love, and I suppose you just want to go around and love everybody. And you say, well, don't put any labels on me. I'm just a human young kid. That's all I am. But he said, I've been going through that big high school with thousands of students in it, the biggest one in the Twin Cities, and I don't look to right or left. I don't love anybody, and I actually hate the teachers because they don't give us any personal attention in those immense overgrown classes. But I read Starr Daily's book, Love Can Open Prison Doors, and I believe I've been missing the boat. So, Mother, won't you pray that I'll love everybody today? The next morning he said, Mother, pray that I love everybody today. Next morning, the same thing, day after day. After breakfast, he'd rise, take his books, and he'd turn to his mother. Invariably, if he ever forgot, he'd come running back and remind her. In the middle of winter, he said to Mother, maybe you better slow up on that prayer. And one of my daughters said that we just heard that Miles was nominated for the presidency of that big senior class. I said, that's nice. One person must like him, whoever nominated him. But I was amazed when he's elected president of a senior class of 780 students. I was simply astounded when I heard later that he was elected the most popular boy in the whole high school. The editor of the school paper broke the news to him and asked him if he had anything to say, and he said only this, that if you like everybody, everybody will like you. When he came to college, he felt that he was elected to things without deserving them. He hadn't been the greatest orator. He wasn't on their football team. What ground did he have to be elected the most popular? So when he came to college, he tried to suppress that love of his a little, but he forgot toward the last years, and he was elected president of the student body the last year, and he made the best president they ever had. And he hardly graduated before they elected him president of the entire Alumni Association. And so I have found this, that you have a right, when we seek first to ask God, don't ask him to give you a lot of friends, but you have a right to ask God to make you a good friend and help you to love everybody and love others. And you'll be amazed how many friends come walking into you. Here's Starr Daily. When he left, there was no one, not a friend he had excepting in the underworld. But he found that love could open prison doors, and he began to love people, and he has probably more friends than almost anyone in this room. So that you come out of a penitentiary, even though you make your bed in Sheol, in hell, you let love go before you, and you'll find marvelous things coming to you. Well, the shoes for the feet, that's guidance. When Starr came out of the penitentiary, They asked him if he'd earned an honest dollar, and he said no. Do you realize that there are 12 million men out of employment? They're at the height of a Great Depression, and you have to compete with all them for jobs. And there's only one job you know, and you're the best in the world at it, and that's opening safes. We prophesied that in 3 months you'll be back in the penitentiary. He said, no, I have my employer. And they said, who? Jesus Christ. Well, he went out, and there, what should he do? The only place he knew was the underworld, and if he went there, he'd definitely be immersed again. He asked the Lord for guidance, and the Lord said, go to the underworld, the only place you know, but not to exploit it, but to redeem it. He went to the underworld, and he found 300,000 lost children. We have a terrific period following every war of youthful delinquency. It was almost worse then, but it reached its height after the crash of 1929, when when the people had out of employment, they couldn't support their children. They ran away from home. He found these children riding the boxcars, sleeping in the hobo jungles, and eating out of the garbage cans, and becoming addicted to all the vices. He rode the boxcars with them. He got their stories. He sent them back by the scores. Crime does not pray. You get back to your homes. And he could speak with authority. And then he took 300 pages of manuscript that he'd gathered about these children to a publisher. And the publisher said if you'd expurgate a fourth of it or a third of it, we might publish it. But the American public couldn't stand it. If it was about the lost children of Russia or Mother India, we might take it. He said, I'll not change a line. One of the companies stole the plot, some of the story, and brought it out in a movie called The Lost Generation. But the women's clubs and the mothers' clubs wanted to hear him. By the way, yes, and when he finished one of his addresses, a woman came up and said, what would you do if you had $300? I'd take the first train to Washington. Well, here's the $300. At Washington, he found that Catherine Lynrett had been put in charge of the youth program. She looked this material over. She spent all night reading it. As she usually gave the conferences just 10 minutes. But she called him back. She said, this is terrible, but I believe every word of it. We're going to hit it. We're going to hit it hard. And they established the CCC camps and the youth hostels, and then they put in the WPA, which relieved the unemployed, and the children went flocking back to their homes. And in 1 year, Starr Daily made atonement for the 25 years in the underworld because he followed the footsteps, the guidance of Jesus Christ. So I believe thoroughly in asking for those shoes of guidance. But when it comes to the fatted calf, there was the piece de resistance for me. I never could pray for money. And what is capital and cattle mean but the same thing? Pecunia in Latin means money, and it means cattle. So when you refer to the fatted calf, it means referring to the money that you need for your supply. It came about the time that Starr was getting out in that depression period. I found that my classes were dwindling. The college was suffering for lack of financial support. The president was hard put to raise the money for our salaries, and I said, I'm going to help you out, Mr. President. I'm going to take a half year off, and I'll only take half salary. Well, how will you support your family? I'm going out to California. I'm going to try to write a book. And on the way, I'm arranging a series of meetings, and I hope the honorariums will support the family. But when all the plans were completed, I saw I was going to be just $200 short. The first series of addresses I was to give were at Chicago before the congregational ministers of Cook County. A series of 8 talks in 3 days. There was a woman, a plump, contented, placid, woman that came every time that was not a congregational minister. I suppose she did do some preaching. Perhaps she had some little center of some kind. But when these talks were over, then they decided to send out the leading ministers to little neighboring towns to start a preaching mission and spread this thing they were trying to catch. And I was to start it by going out to Austin. I got on the elevated train, and up there in one of the seats I could see that plump, contented-looking woman. And I said, I hope she's not going to hear me again, because I'm going to give the same talk on overcoming anger and fear I gave the ministers the day before yesterday. But when I got off, I could hear a sweet voice behind me saying, I see I'm not late because the preacher hasn't arrived yet. And I said, I'm sorry, you're going to hear me again, because I'm going to give a talk that you've heard. And I told her, and she said, oh, I could hear that 100 times. On the way home, we rode in the same car, in the same seat, and I asked her why she wanted to hear me speak so much. She said, because I want to get the beautiful ideas on prayer that you have. I'm often asked to talk on prayer, and I don't have many ideas. I said, why do you carry such a big bag? All the ladies carry little bags about the size of a hymn book, and if you'd open one of those, you'd find a handkerchief and a mirror and a comb and a lipstick and a nickel. That's just about all you'd find. I used to look through my wife's when I needed some change, and that's about what I'd find. Well, I said, but ordinarily a woman only needs a little. We meant to put all in her hip pocket. But here she'd had one almost the size of a suitcase. She said, I had it made especially to order, to hold my money. To hold your money? Why, yes, don't you read the scriptures? Yes, but I never heard of anybody having big suitcases to hold money. Why, don't you remember when the prophet prayed for rain, and the Lord said, if you want rain, dig the ditches, and the deeper you dig them, the more rain you'll get. And if you pray for money, have a big bag to hold it. I said, does money come to you? Oh, yes, it just rains in. I said, then you love money. Why, yes, she says, I do, but I love it in the right way. What made you say that? Why, because what you love loves you. There's a professor at our college that loves little dogs, and I hate to go to college with him because all the little dogs in the neighborhood tag along behind us all the way to college. Now, I love ideas, and they come to me when I need them, but I have considered money as filthy lucre. I'm brought up to think of that, and it rather runs away from me. But now you love money, and it comes to you. Say, you have a matrix for money, I have a matrix for idea. I need $200 more this year. You pray for $200 to come to me, and I'll pray for beautiful ideas to come to you. A shake, she said. Well, the next evening, the Camps Farthest Out gave a sort of banquet to me before I went to California. And as I was walking out, a man and woman were standing at the door. I'd like to just tell about them for a moment. I received a letter from a woman in Chicago, and she said, I don't want my husband to know I'm writing you, but we're terribly distressed, under a great strain, and we're praying. We want you to pray for us. As a Mrs. Sharp. One day, a man of 6'4" in height came walking into my office in St. Paul, and he said, my name is Mr. Sharp. I have come up here, told my wife I was coming on a business meeting in Minneapolis, but I really came to see you. She and I are reading Your Soul's Sincere Desire, and we're in deep prayer over a situation that may just wreck our lives. I said, well, open it up. He said, I have been vice president of the Quaker Oats Company, and I've sold out, and I put all my money into a new venture, for a new invention for producing white flour. We're just finishing our factory. All the patents have been held up, and now we find why. Another company has stolen all the patents, and now they've got the factory. We're just left high and dry. I said, well, how did they get the patents? Well, there's a company named the Laboratories, the Long Laboratories, handle this, and one of the men working for them is working with that other company. We think that he stole it, but we don't have any proof. The Sharp factories and the Long Laboratories, so he said, that's the long and short of it. And I said, did that man that you think has betrayed that, was he fairly treated? Was he justly treated by the company? I've looked into that, and I don't think that he was. Then you must expect to accept some grief. He said, well, I'm willing to take some, but I don't think they have a right to steal our whole thing. I said, no, they haven't. And he said, would it be all right to put it in the hands of a lawyer? And he said, we have put it in, a religious lawyer, and doing it, want to handle it just, and want your prayers around it. And I said, all right, you have the right spirit. And so I can gladly pray for you. But I'm going to ask you, though, to take John Burroughs' poem, Mine Own Shall Come to Me, and memorize the first and the third and the last stanza. Mine own shall come to me. They cannot take that which is your own from you. That is a law that will never be broken. So we prayed, and then when he left, I said, I feel that in a year's time, this will all be straightened out to the mutual satisfaction of both parties. In 1930, the Camp Farthest Out convened, and Mr. Sharp and his wife came with moving pictures. They took moving pictures of that first Camp Farthest Out. He said, I was a day late coming here because it came out just as you prophesied. It's to the satisfaction of both parties. On payment of $150,000 to the other company, we'll be given the permits, the rights for the sales rights for all of the American continent and of all of Europe. And I said, $150,000 would just about break me up, taking all my life to save that. How is that going to affect you? He said, our income the first year will be probably twice that much. Well, so I'm explaining this. Here's Mr. Sharp and his wife whispering to each other and sealing a little envelope, and when I went out, they handed it to me, said, here's a little token of appreciation, just forget it. I thanked them and put it in my pocket and proceeded to forget it. And I got in the train, got in my elevated berth, and was ready to fall asleep when I remembered that envelope. So I opened up the envelope, and out came a check for $20. Now, those ciphers looked a little haywire, so I had to adjust my spectacles and look more carefully. $200.